really, I'm just like looking for any kind of advice that you guys would give, to a managed IT company getting started, or they're unsure about, how they structure their services, their packages, their agreements, um, what tools they should be looking at. Any
I
advice
would
that you
say
guys have?
when I first started out, my vision wasn't clear. Like I didn't know why I wanted to be an MSP, and I think that if I was to redo it again, I would really want to focus in on my like core values, my mission. Even if I'm a one man shop, I want to know what that is so I can extend that out to my team as I grow, and that will really sort of solidify us. But also have like set goals and set and measure goals, right? So if you're just like it's another day, I hope someone calls me and blah blah blah, like you're not going to go anywhere. But if you set goals and you're ambitious, then I think you're going to go places.
Yeah, I agree with that. I find that one of the biggest problems that I've seen MSPs do, and up to and including ourselves, is usually undervaluing their services. So usually what happens is they have to feed the beast. So they're more scared of a no than they are of actually partnering and valuing their services appropriately. Everyone wants to get paid when they're asleep, right? That's the goal, right? So the proactive maintenance is the portion of that. The tool sets are what helps you execute that. But if you undervalue your services, that client's going to be a problem today, tomorrow, and in the future. So you need to make sure that you're pricing your services appropriately for the value you're providing. And most MSPs have a hard time articulating what that value is. So that's a big challenge for sure. So if you undervalue your services today, the conversation's going to be tough next year and the following years, and then you're gonna inadvertently classify your clients wrong. So what happens is a client that was your number one A plus client 2 years ago will become a Z client because you're going to move your services up, right? And you're going to say, okay, this is what we're charging now. This is what we're charging now, but you'll never go back, or you don't go back and talk to those clients and get them trued up. And then you have a service delivery mismatch and the client doesn't become as valuable, but yet they were with you and they helped you get there. So undervaluing your service is a big one.
I think also just being true to yourself and having the business represented by who you are as a person. I mean, you mentioned core values and culture. We came up with that near the beginning. There's certain things that we wanted as an IT company that have been with us now for, the 12, 14 years. And it's just be true to yourself when you come up with those core values, something that's reflective of who you are. And just making sure that the people you bring on, the vendors you work with, the people you hire, the clients you work with match, right? Because that way your team is super happy. They're not angry. You're delivering amazing service because they love their job. They love to be there. To me, that was definitely one of the big things that we did near the beginning, which has been massive, just like culture building.
Well,
Sure.
and you end up in a scenario where, things are going to happen. Bad scenarios are going to occur. You can do all the planning in the world, but if you have a relationship and if you have a value match with both your clients, your vendors, and your employees, those challenges can be overcome, right? With the relationship portion, not the problem that's at hand. It's bigger than that. You can use the relationship to navigate those waters, right?
Yeah, I say like we interview our clients as much as they are interviewing us because we
100%.
want it to be a good fit.
Right.
Like Dan said, we're getting into business together. They don't know who we are. We don't know who they are. We don't know their intentions. Hopefully it's good. But we want to build long-term relationships, and without starting on a good foot, it's not going to last.
So, what advice do you have for the guys who like haven't walked away from a deal yet? They're getting started. They need revenue, like you said, feeding the beast. Like, what words of encouragement do you have for like it's okay, or this is when you need to walk away from this deal?
Well, when a dollar ends up costing you five, right? So every dollar on that contract ends up costing you five because it wasn't a good relationship, right? They end up calling you triple the amount of time, or they end up not wanting to upgrade or not doing what's proper or fair, and the relationship becomes lopsided. So be cognizant of the, like Scott said, and like you said, is that if you start with the relationship side and then you start talking about the challenges, it becomes a little bit easier.
Our number one core value is no drinks allowed. And that is there's no way around it, right? So if, and this may sound horrible, but if I'm meeting a prospective client and there's no smile, it's all serious, or I sense that they don't necessarily value what we do, it's going to be a bad fit.
Yeah.
Right? It's going to be a horrible fit. It's going to cause issues internally. We're going to probably end up losing a lot of time, a lot of money. And what sucks is when you bring on those types of clients or those types of employees or those types of vendors, it prevents you from being the superhero, the best IT company to the clients that actually value what you do. Right? I think that's huge.
Well, you can end up in a reputational risk, right? So you
Yeah.
end up in a reputational risk where your brand is only as good as the brand, and if you start taking on everything, you might be shut down before you even got out of the gate. You have an objective in your mind of what 6 months looks like, but 12 months. But in order to get there, you made some bad decisions, which could prevent you from getting to those 6 to 12 month goals. And it could be a bad relationship. You know, the money was so attractive, or there was an opportunity to make some really good project money or something like that. If you're focusing on the wrong things, it's really good in the short, not so good in the long. And then if that relationship deteriorates, then there's some brand degradation, and word travels just as good as referrals.
Yep.
Like referrals internally. Somebody refers you to a client, you know, you have a good chance of closing that, you know, you're being vouched for. The opposite is just as true. The bad experiences come out and the word spreads faster than you can imagine. So that interviewing portion, like both of you have mentioned, I think is huge. Like you really there's gotta be a culture fit, and then you can talk about the pain points portions. So,
What about what are some common pain points or like growing pains that you guys encountered at like 5-10 employees? Like what do you start delegating first? What's a challenge that people need to be on the lookout for, and how should they plan to overcome them? I know there's talks about customer success managers or service managers. There's
Right.
salespeople. Sometimes there's marketing. There's executive assistants. Like if you've got to pick something to delegate,
Yeah, like
what do you go first?
I'd say I'm dealing with that right now, right? So I'm obviously further behind than these guys in terms of employees, but I think where I'm lacking is I can only wear so many hats in a day, right? So I've moved away from doing support, but I'm still doing sales, marketing, payroll, all that kind of stuff, right? But what you have to be good at is learning to delegate and learning to like trust in your team and your employees, and then just trusting that they can do the job.
Well, you can be a firefighter, or you can prevent the fire, right? So if you're a firefighter, one of the problems is where you're spending the most amount of your time fighting your fires is probably what you need to look at first as to filling that gap. If it's on the technical side, if you can't deliver the service, there's no point in having a client services manager. All they're going to be doing is fielding complaints all day, every day, because you're not delivering the service. So you have to have those people in place. And for us, it's a never-ending investiture. Like I feel like I'm always investing back in the business all the time, like to grow, to expand, and to provide better service. But
Yeah, and I mean it takes time and it takes a lot of hard work, and it's fun now to look back and be super proud of where you are, right?
Mhm.
But oftentimes, we idolize perhaps, and we shouldn't, other businesses or other business owners, and we think, I want to be that person, I want to be that business. They did it, it's super easy. Not, understanding and knowing that, hey man, we sacrificed a whole lot of our personal time. We sacrificed our family's time. We sacrificed a lot of these things to be able to get where we are. It wasn't easy. It requires a lot of work. But I think what am I trying to say? I think it's all of a sudden you're going to get there. and when you get there, it's you're not done. And I just want to make sure that people watching this, don't just think that, hey, I want to get there and then we're done.
Yeah.
And everything's going to be easy. Our challenges just change.
everyone's journey is different.
Yeah.
So, but in this day and age where there's social media, there's LinkedIn, where everybody's bragging about their successes, and it looks like everybody's kind of an overnight success, or
It's a
things are
facade.
just crushing, right? It's a facade, right? So, like, what's the you guys grinded for how long before again? There's always problems that come up, but when did you feel like, how many years in did you feel like it took before you were more or less the owner of the company? You were making decisions. You weren't necessarily down in the weeds. Because a lot of guys, they think like, man, I'm 5 years in, I'm 3 years in. Like, this is terrible.
Yeah.
I'm still, I'm still in the business every day.
I think your point's correct. I think there's going to be parts where you're going to feel like I'm nailing it, but there's still things that are going to. There's still days you're going to get your ass handed to you. Like there's certain days where you're going to come in and you're going to think you have everything in a group, everything's locked up, and something on some idle Tuesday is going to come at you sideways.
Forgot something.
There's just not. It's just there's no way to get around that, right? But I know that some of the challenges are like you end up as you start off as a one person shop in your basement, right? You know that you kind of, let's say you're in break fix or MSP model, you kind of know, you're kind of starting to deal with the vendors, you're kind of seeing what other MSPs are doing, you start making that headway, but then there's a problem. You need to get paid, but then you want another body so that you're doing less. But every body you bring on detracts from your total revenue, so there's always this balancing act. It's really a dance that never ends between, the SaaS to death.
Yeah.
5,000 vendors to perform the service, the person to actually pick up the calls, and then to get paid for it all for the business side.
No, but I think there's a correlation between the two things that we talked about the importance of having that culture and everything else, and with the growth, right? Because when you grow, if you've built your company with amazing clients that fit your culture, they're going to be a lot more patient with you as you go through those growing pains.
I agree.
Right? So during those growing pains, there was a time where maybe our help desk wasn't as solid as it was, right? Maybe, too many people are supporting too many clients and those types of things. And in the process, we've kind of improved our service offering, but there was a moment, there was some friction, but as long as you have those relationships and as long as they're great clients and they value what you do and you're open and honest about it, it really does help you kind of through that growth.
I agree in retrospect. Like if I was to be self-aware enough to go back to my beginning days, there's things and there's things you can do something about. And there is the problem of, depending on what your personal pressure is, like if you're the sole provider of if your hopes and dreams of your entire family are based off of this thing having its wings, there's always going to be external pressure, and it's always going to be tempting to give in to the not fit. Right? And I know that you're going to make that decision. Like you are absolutely going to
pay the bills.
You got to pay the bills.
Yep.
So you're going to bring on clients, but being aware of that is important as well, that you're accepting some pain and heartache. I think the higher road is to do the value match. Like if I would have gone back in my time but again, also being aware enough that there was no way around it at that time. You were taking everything and you were hoping that you were going to be able to deal with it later. But that dealing with it later, like we mentioned, is a brand problem, right? You can run into that brand awareness problem where you've done some damage, and if you don't do that properly, it's going to cause you some grief. But I do get picking all the low fruit, saying yes to everything. Do I think it's proper anymore? No, and I do think it does have some risks that I probably fluked out on, as opposed to it being the way to do it is probably.
But it's a learning experience, right? And that's part of the business.
And sometimes you make the wrong decisions, and you got to fix them.
Yep.
Right? Trust your gut. I would say trust your gut. My gut has barely been wrong. About somebody giving you an icky feeling. I mean, we've hired people where it was like, oh, I really want this to work. I'm really, you're almost desperate because, whatever, and you don't listen to your gut. And then a month later, you're like, oh shoot, my gut was right. Yeah, for sure. I think something else. Is, well, two things, at least for us, that's worked, I feel, really well, is don't imitate, innovate, especially in your local market. I don't like to see, I know I'm supposed to, but I don't like to see or read up on what my competitors are doing. I want to do my own thing, and really kind of sets us apart from what they're doing. I know we have somebody on our team now that's trying to learn more about them, but it's like, no, I don't want to hear it. I want to do our own thing.
You've got your own vision and
exactly, and I don't want it to get skewed with what somebody else is doing, right? And never stop learning. Never stop learning.
I know that one of the biggest growths that we had was we actually went to an auto task event in Florida, and I know that when we came back, we evaluated everything we were doing from top to bottom, like a complete business reevaluation. And I know that the following year, our revenue didn't double, it quadrupled within 12 months. Wow. And the reason why, it was not necessarily because of Autotask or because of the vendor, it was because we were placed in a room with thousands of other MSPs. And what you did is not to imitate, but you kind of realized that I'm doing some things that I thought were in line, but we're undervaluing. We didn't realize what necessarily competitors are doing. So it's not to emulate, but it was to realize that it was like a gut check, right? Like, and realization that the value we thought we were providing was grossly under what the norm
Yeah,
is.
like I really value like networking events. I know with COVID it was hard, so people were doing like Teams meetings and stuff, but just getting in line with like, checking out Reddit, checking out like different people in your industry, like, just connecting with people and seeing what they're doing, poking their brains, right?
So how do you network with guys? I mean, do you like go into a peer group? Do you just call managed IT companies in other markets and get to know them? Like, what's like, where do you start?
Well, Scott and I talk, I'm going to say weekly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're constantly in contact, and it's the same thing with other MSPs that we've either met at conferences or Orlando or Florida, because there's some that are formal and they get like I'm not telling the secret sauce kind
Yeah.
of scenario, but then there's others that genuinely are just trying to say, hey, I understand, I went through that, this is what I did in the scenario. Not to say that that's the way to do it, but to lend perspective. You still have to make the decision. You're the one taking the risk of whatever that is. But
Yeah, and I'm part of a networking group that there's 7 of us in our team. We meet every single week online. We meet in person every quarter, and we're tight. Like, we're close. These are like my best friends. Like, we share absolutely everything, not just work wise, but how it's affecting us at home. Right? I know issues with, sometimes it's with the spouse, and patience with what we're doing and those types of things, and how we handle those situations. And I know sometimes you get home and you're so tired that it's hard to still have that energy left for your family, right? And it's really, really tough. And so a lot of my friends at home that don't have a business don't necessarily understand the struggles that we go through, right? And I don't want to sound like we're a victim. We're not, but it's a very, very
It's
different.
hard to relate.
Very hard to relate. Yeah.
People get into a protectionism type scenario, right, where they're like, I don't want to talk about vulnerability, or I don't want to talk about challenges. I only want to talk about successes, like we see, right? And I think that's doing a disservice. It's like, no, listen, like, I have a problem. And even, it doesn't matter what size you are. It doesn't matter if you're 1, 2, 50. The challenges just change.
I feel like I grow more when I talk about my challenges.
Oh, yeah.
Because then, it's like people have always come before you, or they're about to be before you, and if you don't get it out there, you're never going to get it resolved, right?
Yeah.
So,
Definitely. Yeah, build connections, relationships with non-competing MSPs, and also don't be scared of competing MSPs.
Oh yeah.
Reach out to them. I mean, go have breakfast with them. I mean, you don't have to share all your secrets with them, but
you had
I mean, there's nothing wrong with
weekly chats with
Yeah.
guys.
I have a VIP membership for a cigar bar, and there's 2 MSPs in my area that we constantly go for cigars.
Yeah.
And like I said, they're like, this, like, a great example is Microsoft NCE. Right? Like, all the whole MSP community was like, what are we going to do about this? And everyone was sharing ideas, and they were like, this is the challenges we're facing. And even if nothing else, it acts as a pressure gauge, right? Like a release, because you're just like, this sucks, this is the challenges, and nobody else will understand that. There's nobody else.
Facing it together.
Yeah, but nobody else will get that, right? And then you just kind of, even if it was just vent, it's a release, right? So it's something you've built up forever, and you just get it off your chest.
Yeah.
What kind of tools should people be checking out that maybe aren't super popular?
No,
Right? What's the good?
I'm not answering that question.
Yeah,
I'm not answering that question.
so tools is a bad thing. So a lot of example is like, people always ask us, and the vendors are the worst. They're like, oh, what do you do for your marketing? I'm like, we don't talk about tools. We're fixing problems and solutions.
Yeah.
We're providing
Yeah,
solutions.
what PSA do you use? What RMM do you use?
Yeah,
Yeah,
no.
like, not a
How
good
is that
idea.
relevant, right?
It's
Yeah.
I think it's we're all using a PSA, we're all using an RMM, we're all using a CRM, right?
What's something that nobody's using that they need to be, or a lot of people aren't, like, security or some things like that. I'm debating adding this to my package and I haven't yet.
I prefer answering the question, I have a challenge or I need to do this. What's a tool you have experience with, as opposed to the latest and hottest silver bullet that doesn't exist. Like, I constantly have this conversation on the cybersecurity side. You can't tool your way into compliance. You have to be trained. You have to understand what the actual problem is. And yes, you can have tools that will help you monitor and audit your compliance and be secure, but the tool doesn't matter.
And I think however, yeah, you're right, the tool doesn't matter. However, I feel that a lot of MSPs consider their PSAs or their RMM to be their CRM as well.
Ooh.
And so, you know, it's not a marketing tool, right? It's not a sales tool. It's nothing else. It's managing your tickets. It's managing your projects. It's managing your assets, your business side of things. That's it. You need a CRM. You need a marketing strategy. You need, you know, those other platforms, you know, to grow your business. Otherwise, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it has a shelf life, right? Like the usability, and I have this conversation all the time about being SaaS to death.
Yeah.
Like to run a modern day MSP, you're probably talking between 11 to 30 software tools. So that's a lot, right? And that's a lot of to maintain, manage, handle, make sure. And the problem is a lot of companies will walk through the vendor room at a conference and say, I need that, and that, but they get implemented 5% of that tool. So
Yeah.
they don't have the manpower to get the 100%, which they thought the value was based off of. So there's almost no point in actually implementing that if they can't get it actually across the
Plus,
finish
there's
line.
so many tools that it's really hard to be an expert at each one.
Yeah.
Right. Which is where it's like, you know, our PSA, maybe we're only using it 25% of its capability. Right.
Yeah.
So.
Well, here, last question, guys. I mean, thank you for your time. But what advice do you have, just like in general, if you needed to give somebody a pep talk who's, you know, early on, or they've been struggling with the COVID and the economic, you know, depression, what advice would you give to a guy that's, you know, maybe seeing the darkness right now?
You're going to be really good at doing the things that you like to do inside your business. And you're going to be great at it. For everything that you don't like to do or you're not good at, outsource, right? Outsource. Either if you're able to hire somebody, great. You know, if you're not, there's other options there to free up your time to really build the company. And I think oftentimes, especially at the beginning, when I was a one-man show for like the first year or so, I didn't realize that I was ready for that first employee. I was ready to outsource. I thought, you know, we're paycheck to paycheck to paycheck until I finally brought that person on, and all of a sudden we're making a bunch more money because I was holding on to a whole bunch of work and I wasn't able to complete everything.
Yeah.
So when you get there, just recognize it and look for help, if not hiring, you know, Arsenal as an example, to outsource. I hate making phone calls. So we're going to get Arsenal to do it. And Arsenal does it way better than we do.
Yeah.
And we should have done that a long time ago. And so I think, yeah.
For us, it was about when we first started out, or when I first started out, it was about being very lean. So we prided ourselves on finding SaaS options. I didn't want to go into debt. I didn't want to buy expensive hardware and stuff like that. I found a couple other guys in my industry and I just consulted with them, right? So, hey, I'm charging X. His rate's Y, and I'm gonna make the difference. And that's just how we grew.
Yeah, and I definitely did the opposite. I kind of went both feet into it and invested way ahead of what our revenue was. Actually, I constantly invested it against what our revenue was. So if our revenue was X, I was spending Y, and I was growing into it though at a rapid rate. So like we did the 1 year business plan, the 3 year business plan, and the 5 year business plan, and organically, without a straight line of how to get there, we just grew like this, and like engulfed those plans, and we just kind of followed what the trends were. But if you were to ask, like as you are, what the recommendation would be is don't undervalue the services. Make sure you're protecting your brand. Make sure you have a partner alignment, both vendor and client base. That's hugely important. And then the other one is build it and they will come. Like if you actually do those three things, I think they will come. It's just you have to have the skills available. I am not an accountant, so therefore I do not do my books. I am not a cold caller, therefore not going to do my cold calling. I am not an SEO person. I do one thing very well, and that is be an MSP. So
If I can add one more thing, love and appreciate your staff, your team,
Oh, yeah.
and the people that are helping you get there. Yeah, because they play a huge role in the success of the company.
Without them, you're actually going to lose money, right? Because it's going to, every time you retrain and every time, your client satisfaction will go down because they get customized to a technician or a process, and then they build a bond, and it's turnover is bad, right? So the more opportunity, celebrate your employees' successes as yours, because they are, right? You are helping them through their growth.
Publicly too.
Oh,
Yeah,
100%.
yeah. Make sure everybody knows that
LinkedIn,
these.
blog
100%.
posts.
Yeah.
Awesome, guys. Awesome. Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you guys. This is going to help out a lot of guys.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Cool.
Awesome. All right, let's go have some fun.
I feel like this is worth a flag.
This is worth a flag. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
No.
Worth a flag.
Worth a flag. Come
Worth
on.
a flag.
Come on.
Oh.